Welcome to Teens and Media, Power and Peril, produced by the Sustainable Media Center. Our next speaker is the extraordinary author and thinker, Sherry Turkle. Sherry, welcome to the Teens and Media stage.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and I loved the previous presentation. I loved hearing about agency and empowerment. My new project actually is about agency in digital life and how to encourage it. And if my generation is cynical, I think it's perhaps because we grew up with the internet, and many people who grew up with the internet think the internet is all grown up, and they make that kind of mistake that they have this thing here that they need to deal with, instead of seeing something that they can evolve and change and make it anew. And I was so excited by the presentation because it had that feeling of, no, it's not all grown up. It's time to make it anew. So I was very excited. But I also love the idea of taking a hard look at where we are and where history has brought us. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, because I think that we are in a process of not always wanting to see really what's in front of our eyes. And I think we need to start there. And I want to just review that evidence, because we're also, I think, in a bit of denial about where we are. There's increasing evidence of a catalog of harm from our lives on the screen, and particularly on how social media undermines adolescent development. And that's peril. But there's also so much power, because this technology, as we see, passes to a new generation, and that's the hope. So that's why this is called, the peril and the power. It's the peril and the hope. But here's the peril. Things are so bad in the industry now, it's so ripe for a takeover by new voices, that when Facebook wanted to start an Instagram for under 13-year-olds, it hid its internal research about how teenage girls felt after beginning to use Instagram. 13.5% of UK teen girls said their suicidal thoughts became more frequent. 17% said that their eating disorders got worse. 32% said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. Facebook hid these results and was going to proceed with its under 13 Instagram until a whistleblower brought all this to light. Now, those are harms that focus on content. But beyond those kinds of effects that people saw, acknowledged, and then life goes on, screen life inflicts other kinds of harms that work independently of specific content. And I'd like to focus on those because I think that we too often say in our advice to parents world that I'm a part of, don't look at this, look at that, don't look at this, don't look at that, looking at the content of what we show people. Consider how screen life teaches a certain kind of notion of efficiency. Screen life has an aesthetic that says the difficult will be made easy, the rough will become smooth, and that which had friction will become friction-free. And I just want to pause on what's implied by this idea of things being friction-free. It doesn't just mean that the new digital world will be friction-free because economic transactions will go more smoothly with things like electronic fund transfers. The vision of friction-free is more ambitious. The goal was to minimize and even eliminate social friction, interactions that might cause emotional stress. Screens teach us to see the stress of human relationships as a problem that technology can solve. Screens teach us that vulnerability is a problem that technology can solve. But actually, daily life, real daily life with people, teaches you one thing, just as technology and screens teach you another. And that goes for everyone. But this message hits hard on young people growing up in the digital world. Face-to-face interaction with peers teach young people that when they stumble and lose their words, it's uncomfortable, but that they can end up coming closer to each other. Screen life suggests new connections that allows them to edit their thoughts. And then that becomes tempting, very tempting if you're at a point in your life when you feel vulnerable. And the teenage years are a point of peak vulnerability. Life, everyday life, teaches the value of imperfect presence. On the screen, we feel closer to perfect. We find ways around a certain kind of conversation, the kind that is open-ended and a little scary. That's exactly what's so tempting, the idea of escape from that scary feeling. Life teaches the connection between empathy and attention. Empathy is built on gestures that communicate that you don't know what someone else has to say, but you want to learn. Like putting down your phone. Consider the classic study that even a phone turned off and turned face down on the lunch table does two things to a conversation. First, it moves the conversation to more trivial matters because no one wants to anticipate an interruption while they're talking about something really important. And second, the people having lunch feel less invested in each other. So even a silent phone disconnects us. Studies of college students in the 30 years before 2009, that is in the years before cell phones came on the scene, show a 40% drop in empathy, just simply measured by people's ability to put themselves in the place of another person in the story. Life teaches that to get to empathy, you have to take your time. But technology offers a world that exalts efficiency. A college junior explains that dorm life taught her what she calls the 7-minute rule. It takes her 7 minutes to know where a conversation is going because it takes that long to get into the rhythm and the pace of another person. And I think when I interview her, I'm thinking this woman is my goddess. She has understood something so important about open-ended conversation. But then this goddess says that she hardly ever waits for those 7 minutes to pass. She loses patience and she takes out her phone whenever the conversation falls silent. More than this, she says, she can't tolerate what she calls the boring bits of conversation. Boring bits. That's how we've come to talk about the hesitations and pauses, the natural rhythms of human conversations. In part, we denigrate spontaneous human conversation because social media offers us an alternative, a rush of constant stimulation. And we come to think that this is how life can be. Maybe this is how life is supposed to be. But it turns out that a capacity for boredom is one of the most important developmental achievements of childhood. Neuroscience teaches that when we experience boredom, the brain replenishes itself. We lay down the pathways for a stable sense of self. When we're bored, we learn to go within ourselves and develop our imagination. So with our technology encouraged intolerance for boredom, there's another casualty, an intolerance for solitude. A classic study of college students asked if they'd be willing to sit alone without a book or a smartphone for 15 minutes. The students say yes, for money. And when the researchers go further and ask, well, do you think you'd want to give yourself electroshocks during this time? The students say, no way, they're horrified. But after 6 minutes of being alone without a book or a phone and with a handy electroshock machine in the room, many students begin to give themselves mild electroshocks rather than sit quietly with their thoughts. But the capacity for solitude is important because it's essential to your capacity for relationships. relationships. If you can't be alone and you turn to others, you don't hear them as they are. You turn them into who you need them to be to support your fragile sense of self. Solitude supports empathy. If you don't learn to be alone, you'll only know how to be lonely. Technology makes us feel less vulnerable. We have controlled exchanges, but here is what we know about life. We lose out personally and as citizens in a democracy when we don't take the time to talk to each other, when we don't learn how to listen to each other, especially to other people who are not like us. On the internet, we can use it to listen to fewer and fewer people who don't share our opinions. And today's political climate, we all need, and we certainly need young people to develop the very skills that screen time can erode. Slowing down to hear someone else's point of view, waiting those 7 minutes, valuing those boring bits. If we reclaim our attention and our capacity for solitude, young people will have a better chance to reclaim our communities, our democracies, and our shared common purpose. We need to be able to talk across differences. We all need to be able to listen to why someone else thinks the way they do. That may be so boring, but that's what democracy is truly based on.